We're learning all about Fargo with frequently asked questions. We've got Ebony Kungle from The Colorful Cookie. Hello, Ebony.
Hello.
So people have all kinds of questions. Since I've got you from The Colorful Cookie and you make gluten-free macarons, I have actually somebody who's listening live on the radio right now. I just stepped up to use the restroom. I read their message. They want to know, vegan cookies? Is that a thing you could do?
Vegan macarons are so tough. So the structure, right, of a meringue comes from the protein in the egg.
Yeah.
And so...
I suppose. Yeah, eggs aren't vegan.
Correct. Eggs are not vegan.
Other than live long and prosper, I don't know anything about vegans.
That's fair. So with the vegan route, it's no animal products. And then no animal products.
At all.
At all.
At all. So everything's got to be like plant-based.
Yes,
okay.
Plant-based. And so it's super tough with the macarons because you have a few options, but the two most popular are using a potato starch and using a chickpea. So the chickpea water is what it's called aquafaba. And so it whips up really great. It just sort of, you really don't know what's going to happen until you put them in the oven. And so that's the scary part. And it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So it's like the sad thing is, yes, there is a possibility. I've been working on it for about a year now.
It reminds me of, you ever watch Breaking Bad?
Yes.
The lawyer says, having a conscience gets expensive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds like that's the case with vegan food as well.
Yes, and so it's a lot of experimentation. I've been promising to get them out for a little over a year, but it's just so tough to perfect.
Now, you and I, we sit together every week in our networking group. For my sins, I'm a realtor at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Premier Properties, and so it's good for me to network and meet with people. I also own a couple other businesses, so I just like to know people. You've joined our group. You're there Fridays. Yes. And you came last week. You brought some of the goodies to share, including what you're going to be selling at the upcoming Berry Festival.
Yes.
You brought some cinnamon croissants.
I did.
And you brought those eclairs. Mm-hmm. Now, I thought those were deep fried. They were not.
They were not. And so an eclair is very simple. It's what's the base of it is what they call a choux pastry, CHOUX, choux. And it's just flour, gluten-free, of course, butter, and milk. Usually it's water, but with gluten-free flour, you have to use milk to make it.
So I'm not hearing protein in there, although, so it's not, so we don't need the eggs.
For the batter, there is eggs in there.
Oh,
I just hadn't gotten them
Okay,
yet.
all right. Well,
Yeah.
because could we get a vegan eclair?
That would be a lot easier.
It'd be easier than a macaron.
Than a macaron, yeah.
You say it.
Macaron.
Cookie. Yes. That would be easier than that. Okay. But so tell me how you would make a vegan eclair.
I'd have to substitute the butter, obviously, and then I'd substitute the butter for avocado oil.
Ooh.
And so I would use that.
I love
and
avocados.
Then, and then the egg, you'd use like applesauce, or you could use a banana for that. And so you do the same process and pipe it and stick it in the oven, and you have an eclair.
I'm never having a cook on ever again because it's the lunch hour, and it gets hard enough because the next segment is favorites and the first question is about restaurants, and I'm just always hungry, but I'm just dying right now. And I'm going to have to go across the street. I should have mentioned this during the fresh segment. Did you know T's Tacos is launching today? I don't know if you heard they had like a soft launch. Yeah, I was going to have them on. But have you heard about them at all?
No, I haven't heard about them, but there's a lot of different taco places popping up around town.
Right around the corner here, they make indigenous tacos and indigi bowls. So it's like So it's like a or at least from what I've heard, I haven't gone and eaten it yet, but I'm excited. It's like a well, and you lived in Asia for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So they'll just a bowl of rice with meat on top of it. It's kind of like that, but with wild rice.
I love that.
And maybe bison meat. So definitely not vegan.
Right. Well, along the vegan lines, I tell all my vegan friends, you can always order the bagels that I make. And so the only thing
your bagels are vegan.
The bagels, the base, the flour, the dough is vegan. And so instead of using an egg wash for the end to make them, I can just leave it off. And so it's just flour, water, and yeast.
I love bagels.
Yeah, bagels
I
are
love
delicious.
because again, as I mentioned, I'm a realtor at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Premier Properties. I have to say that every time, the whole thing. Everybody brings donuts. Tired of donuts.
Yes.
Everywhere I go, there's just like a box of donuts sitting there. I don't want them. When people bring bagels, that's when I just light up. I'm excited. I love bagels. Okay, so we do actually have some questions to get to relatively quickly before we move on to the favorite segment. So I'm just going to jump right into it because you are a transplant and you've lived in so many different places. So I think this is a really great question because I get a variety of responses, and I'm really curious to know, we say up here in the Great North, I jokingly call it our immigration policy. It's the weather, right? Like, you must be this tough to live here, right? And so I'm not saying if you leave, you're not tough, but if you're not tough, you're going to leave. Like, it keeps people hardy. I feel like it makes us different somehow, but I don't know. Is there something different about Fargo people, or is that just a bunch of cope? Are we just telling ourselves that because we have to put up with the terrible weather in the winter?
I don't see anything really different about Fargo people. Fargo people are very similar to Iowa people.
Okay. Well, sure, but that's all Midwestern, and they have similar winters.
Right.
How does it compare to Detroit or Washington, where I think the winters are not as harsh? Or
for sure. So, I mean, climate-wise, obviously, it's very different. People-wise, I would say in bigger cities, they're not too inclined to come up to you and have a conversation. I think
so. You think it's a function of density, not climate.
Correct.
Because I think the working hypothesis here is that the climate makes us tough, which makes us special in some way. But you're saying it's just a small town thing. Did you ever visit small towns in Michigan? Does Michigan have small towns?
Oh yeah, everywhere has small towns.
And the small towns are similar to North Dakota small towns?
Yes, I think small towns in general are very similar. It's like you go to a small town, everybody's super close, super nice. They're willing to help you out in that kind of way. Just don't be a jerk, really.
Yeah.
I
like it here.
Yeah, I like it here too.
But Fargo's kind of getting to be a big place, but I feel like it's always going to have that small town feel, and a lot of that has to do, this is my favorite, dad fact to share, the buildings can only get so tall because the dirt is soft. And so if you build them, you familiar with the Leaning Tower of Pisa, how it's fallen over? The reason it fallen over is because they built it on soft dirt and it's too tall. Same thing would happen to Fargo. That's why no building is over three stories tall. And it's because if you go more than 3 stories, it starts to kind of tip over. So the skyscrapers that we do have here, the skyscrapers are the taller buildings that we have here in downtown, they had to spend an enormous amount of money digging and pouring giant concrete pillars.
Oh, wow.
So that they could go all the way down and hit some kind of bedrock or something, or just so that they have that anchor so they don't, otherwise the building would just fall right over.
Wow.
The more you know.
The more you know.
The more you know. All right, one last question. This one has actually been kind of a fan favorite, and then we're going to move on to the last segment here. If you could send only a 3-word message back in time to yourself when you were 18 years old, what would you send? It's only 3. So a magical genie shows up and he says, Ebony, I'm going to grant you a power. I'm going to send those 3 words. You only have this much amount of time to figure out the 3 words. 18-year-old Ebony is going to hear these words and she's going to know that she should trust them. Other than that, she won't know anything. She just it's just beamed into her brain 3 words.
Sure.
What are the 3 words?
My 3 words are ask for help.
Whoa, that is very good. Very good. And what would be different about your life had you done that?
I think, with the military and just the way I grew up, it does feel like Midwest culture. Just figure it out, And so, if you don't do certain things and you don't do them on your own, then you didn't do it. Like you got a handout or you did this. So I think it is a little bit ingrained in us to try and do everything ourselves.
Yeah.
And so the biggest takeaway for me is ask for help.
What a great sentiment. All right. Well, that is all the asking for help we've got time for. We're going to move to our next segment right after break. Fargo favorites, so don't go nowhere.